Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the UES Vengeance. The stars looked calm and peaceful through the big window in front of him. It was a quiet night shift, just like many others. Jake had been watching space for over 20 years, but tonight something was different. Lieutenant Amy Carter sat at her station, listening to the radio signals from deep space. Her job was to watch for any strange messages or calls for help. Most nights, she heard nothing but empty static. But tonight, her screen started flashing with warning lights. "Sir, I'm getting something weird," Amy said, turning to look at Jake. Her voice was excited but worried. "There are lots of distress calls coming from the Kepler 442 system. The signals are very weak, but they're coming from many different places." Jake walked over to Amy's station. He was a tall man with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes from years of staring at space. His uniform was clean and pressed, but his boots were worn from walking the metal floors of countless ships. "What kind of signals?" Jake asked, looking at the flashing lights on Amy's screen. Amy worked quickly with her hands, touching buttons and moving dials. The computer was trying to translate the alien language, but the signals were broken and full of static noise. "The computer is picking up words like help and dying and slavers," she said. "But here's the strange part, sir. They keep using the word Deathworlders." Jake's face went serious. He knew that word. Other alien species had started calling humans Deathworlders because Earth was such a dangerous planet. Most aliens came from safe worlds with gentle weather and friendly animals. But Earth was different. Earth had storms that could destroy cities, animals that could kill with one bite, and weather that could freeze or burn a person to death. "Let me hear it," Jake said. Amy turned up the volume. The bridge filled with strange, high-pitched voices speaking in a language that sounded like music mixed with crying. The computer's translation came through in a robotic voice. "Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help. They came from the sky with big ships and weapons. They are taking our people. They are killing our children. We heard stories about the ones from the Death World. Please, Deathworlders, if you can hear this, help us. We are dying." The message repeated over and over, getting weaker each time. Jake felt his stomach tighten. He had heard distress calls before, but this one was different. These aliens were specifically calling for humans. "Johnson, get over here," Jake called to his navigation officer, Pete Johnson. Pete was a young man with red hair and freckles. He was good with maps and star charts. Pete ran to Amy's station and started working on his computer. "Kepler 442 is in disputed space, sir," he said, pulling up a map of the stars. "Last time we got reports from there, it was home to a peaceful species called the Zilani. The reports said they had about 2 million people living there." Jake studied the map. Kepler 442 was far from Earth, in a part of space where no one really had control. It was the kind of place where bad things could happen without anyone knowing about it. "Tell me about the Zilani," Jake said. Pete typed quickly on his computer. "They're plant-eaters, sir, very peaceful. They grow food and trade with other species. The reports say they don't have any weapons or armies. They never fight anyone." Amy was still listening to the distress calls. Her face was pale. "Sir, I'm getting more details now. The signals are talking about something called the Korthic Empire. They're using big ships to attack the planet from space. They're also sending soldiers to the ground to capture people." Jake knew about the Korthic Empire. They were slavers who traveled from planet to planet, capturing entire populations to sell as workers. They were cruel and violent, and they only attacked species that couldn't fight back. "The Zilani are asking for us specifically," Amy continued. "They say they heard stories about humans in the wars against the space pirates. They think we're the only ones who might help them." Jake felt anger growing in his chest. The Zilani were innocent farmers who had never hurt anyone. The Korthic were attacking them just because they were weak and couldn't defend themselves. It was wrong, and Jake knew that if humans didn't help, no one would. "How long have these signals been coming in?" Jake asked. "About 6 hours, sir," Amy replied. "But they're getting weaker. I think the Korthic are destroying the radio stations. Jake made his decision. He walked to the center of the bridge and pressed a button that would connect him to Admiral Lisa Shaw, the commander of all human military forces in this part of space. "Get me Admiral Shaw on the emergency channel," Jake ordered. "And tell the engine room to prepare for immediate jump to hyperspace. We're going to war." The bridge became busy with activity. Officers ran to their stations and started preparing the ship for battle. Jake could hear the engines getting louder as the ship prepared to jump through space faster than light. Amy looked up at Jake. "Sir, are we really going to fight the Korthek Empire? They have lots of ships." Jake looked at the young woman. She was scared, but she was also brave. "Amy, those people are calling for help, and they're calling for us specifically. They've heard about humans, about what we can do. We can't let them down." Pete was working on his navigation computer. "Sir, if we leave now, we can reach Kepler 442 in about 18 hours. Jake nodded. "Do it, and send a message to all human ships in this area. Tell them we have innocent people under attack by slavers. Tell them the Zilani are calling for the Deathworlders." As the ship prepared to jump into hyperspace, Jake looked out at the stars one more time. Somewhere out there, 2 million innocent people were being attacked by an empire that thought they were safe because their victims were weak. The Korthek Empire was about to learn why the galaxy called Earth a death world, and why that was a very bad thing to wake up. Admiral Lisa Shaw was reading reports in her office when the emergency call came in. She was aboard the UES Retribution, the biggest and most powerful warship humans had ever built. The ship was so large that it had its own small city inside. With thousands of crew members living and working in its metal halls, Lisa was 50 years old and had been fighting space pirates and protecting human colonies for most of her adult life. Her hair was starting to turn gray and she had scars on her hands from old battles. But her eyes were still sharp and her mind was still quick. "Admiral, we have an emergency transmission from Commander Morrison," her assistant said, running into the office. "He says innocent aliens are being attacked by slavers." Lisa pressed a button on her desk, and Jake Morrison's face appeared on the screen. He looked worried and angry. Behind him, she could see the busy bridge of his ship. "Admiral, the Zilani are being destroyed," Jake said quickly. "The Korthek Empire is attacking them with a full fleet. They're killing the civilians and taking prisoners. The Zilani sent out distress calls asking specifically for help from Deathworlders. They're calling for us." Lisa felt her jaw tighten. She had heard about the Korthek Empire before. They were slavers who traveled from world to world, capturing entire populations to sell as workers. They were cruel and cowardly, only attacking species that couldn't fight back. "How many Korthek ships?" Lisa asked. "Intel says about 30 vessels, mostly medium cruisers and transport ships," Jake replied. "They're not expecting a real fight. They think they're just harvesting a defenseless population." Lisa stood up from her desk. "They're about to learn they made a big mistake." "Stand by, Commander. I'm putting together a task force." Lisa walked to the bridge of the Retribution. The bridge was huge, with dozens of officers working at their stations. Through the big windows, she could see other human warships floating. In space nearby, "Communications. Get me Captain Ryan Miller on the Fury, Captain Kate Sullivan on the Hammer, and Captain Danny Torres on the Storm," Lisa ordered. Priority 1. Within minutes, the faces of 3 ship captains appeared on the main screen. These were some of humanity's best military commanders, veterans who had fought in the colony wars and the pirate conflicts. "Captains, we have a situation," Lisa said. "The Korthek Empire is attacking a peaceful species called the Zilani. 2 million innocent people are being killed or captured as slaves. The aliens specifically asked for help from Deathworlders." Captain Miller spoke first. He was a big man with a beard and cold eyes. "How many ships do we have available?" Lisa looked at her tactical officer. 12 warships total. 3 heavy cruisers, 6 destroyers, 2 carriers, and the Retribution. "We're calling it Task Force Omega." Captain Sullivan smiled grimly. She was a woman in her 40s with short black hair and arms covered in tattoos from her time as a Marine. 12 human ships against 30 Korthic vessels. They won't know what hit them. Captain Torres nodded. He was younger than the others, but he had earned his command by being the best fighter pilot in the human fleet. My carriers are ready, Admiral. We can launch within the hour? Lisa felt proud of her captains. They didn't ask about the odds or worry about fighting a larger enemy fleet. They just wanted to know how quickly they could help the innocent people who were being attacked. All ships prepare for immediate departure, Lisa ordered. We jump to hyperspace in 2 hours. The next 2 hours were busy. All across the human fleet, thousands of crew members prepared for battle. In the weapon rooms, technicians checked the rail guns and plasma torpedoes. In the fighter bays, pilots prepared their small, fast attack ships. In the medical centers, doctors prepared for wounded soldiers. Commander Alex Bennett, the fleet's intelligence officer, gathered all the information he could about the Korthic Empire. Alex was a thin man with glasses who was better with computers than with weapons, but his work was just as important as any soldier's. The Korthic use intimidation tactics, Alex reported to the assembled captains. Their ships are designed to look scary and to capture people, not to fight a real military force. Their weapons are mostly for destroying buildings and frightening civilians. Chief Engineer Nina Roberts was working to make the fleet's weapons even more deadly. Nina was a small woman with oil-stained clothes and calloused hands from years of working on ship engines. She knew every bolt and wire in the human fleet. I've increased power to all weapon systems, Nina reported. Our railguns can punch through their armor like paper. Our plasma torpedoes will cut their ships in half. These slavers have never fought anyone who could fight back. Lisa gathered all the ship captains for a final meeting before they left. She stood in front of a large screen showing the Kepler 442 system, where the Zilani were being attacked. The Korthic Empire thinks they can destroy innocent people without consequences, Lisa said, her voice cold and angry. They chose to attack a peaceful species because they thought no one would help. They were wrong. She pressed a button, and the screen showed images of the Zilani. They looked like tall, thin humans with green skin and large eyes. They were plant eaters who spent their lives growing food and creating art. They had never hurt anyone. These people called out to the galaxy for help, Lisa continued. Every other species ignored them. But they specifically asked for the Deathworlders. They asked for us. Today we show the galaxy why Earth is called a death world, and why that should terrify anyone who hurts innocent people. The captains saluted. Lisa could see the determination in their eyes. They were ready to fight. All ships, jump to hyperspace, Lisa ordered. We're going to save the Zilani, and we're going to destroy every Korthic ship in that system. No mercy. For slavers. The human fleet disappeared into hyperspace, racing toward a battle that would change the galaxy forever. The Korthic Empire had made a terrible mistake. They were about to face the wrath of the Deathworlders. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Admiral Lisa Shaw stood on the bridge of the Retribution, looking at the big screen that showed what was happening around the Zilani planet. What she saw made her. Blood-run Cold. 30 Korthic ships were arranged in a circle around the beautiful green and blue planet. Some of the ships were firing bright beams of energy down at the surface, destroying cities and farmlands. Other ships were sending small shuttles back and forth between the planet and huge transport vessels. "My God," whispered Captain Miller from the Fury. His voice came through the communication system, filled with horror. "They're not just attacking, they're destroying everything." Lieutenant Commander Steve Harris was the fleet's scout officer. His job was to watch enemy ships and figure out what they were doing. Steve was a quiet man with sharp eyes who had spent years studying alien technology and battle tactics. "Admiral, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the planet's surface," Steve reported, his voice tight with anger. "The Korthic aren't just capturing people. They're burning the forest, poisoning the rivers, and destroying the farms. They're trying to kill the entire planet." Lisa felt sick to her stomach. She had seen many battles, but this was different. This wasn't war. This was murder on a scale that was hard to imagine. Give me numbers, Harris, Lisa ordered. Steve worked quickly. At his station, reading the signals from the planet and the enemy ships. I count at least 300,000 Zilani already captured and loaded onto the transport ships. But sir, there are Batas everywhere. The Korthek are killing anyone who tries to run or hide. Captain Sullivan's voice came through the communication. System from the Hammer. Admiral, we're seeing Korthek ground troops herding civilians into groups. They're separating the adults from the children. The adults go to the transport ships, but the children... Her voice trailed off. What about the children? Lisa asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. They're killing them, Sullivan sighed, her voice filled with rage. The children are too small to work as slaves, so they're just killing them. Lisa closed her eyes for a moment. She had seen many terrible things in her years as a military commander, but the murder of innocent children was something that filled her with a fury she had never felt before. On the enemy flagship, Overlord, Thrak was watching the destruction with satisfaction. Thrak was a large, ugly creature with gray skin and 4 arms. His species, the Korthek, were natural bullies who enjoyed causing pain and fear. They had been attacking weaker species for hundreds of years, and they had never lost a battle. Excellent work, Thrak said to his officers. The Zilani are even weaker than we expected. We'll have all the useful adults captured within 2 days. Then we can sell them to the mining companies. One of Thrak's officers, a younger Korthek named Grix, pointed at his scanner. Overlord, I'm detecting 12 ships approaching the system. They're small, but they're moving very fast. Thrak looked at the scanner and laughed. 12 ships against 30? Someone is coming to rescue the Zilani, but they're going to die instead. What species are they? Grix worked at his controls, trying to identify the approaching ships. The computer says they're human ships, Overlord, from the planet called Earth. Thrak had heard of humans before. They were a new species that had recently started traveling between the stars. Some reports said they were dangerous, but Thrak didn't believe it. How dangerous could they be? They only had 12 ships. Humans, Thrak said, still laughing. I've heard they come from a planet with heavy gravity and dangerous animals. They call it a death world, but that just means they're good at surviving. It doesn't mean they're good at fighting. Back on the Retribution, Lisa was giving orders to her fleet. She could see the Korthek ships on her screen, and she could see the destruction they were causing on the planet below. All ships, battle stations, Lisa ordered. We're going to show these monsters what happens when they attack innocent people. Captain Torres spoke from the storm. Admiral, my fighters are ready to launch. Just give the word. Lisa looked at the tactical display. The Korthek ships were spread out in a loose formation, confident that no one would dare attack them. They were about to learn a very painful lesson. Here's the plan, Lisa said to her captains. We're going to hit them hard and fast. No warnings, no negotiations, no mercy. These creatures are murdering children, and we're going to make them pay for it. Captain Miller's voice was cold as ice. What are our rules of engagement, Admiral? Lisa thought about the Zilani children who had been killed, about the innocent adults being loaded onto slave ships, about the beautiful planet being destroyed for no reason except cruelty. There are no rules, Lisa said. Destroy every Korthek ship in this system. If they surrender, ignore it. If they run, hunt them down. If they beg for mercy, remember that they showed no mercy to the Zilani children. The human fleet began to move forward, their weapons charging with deadly energy. On the Korthek flagship, Overlord Thrak was still laughing about the 12 small human ships that dared to challenge his mighty fleet. He would not be laughing much longer. All ships, attack formation, Lisa ordered. Let's show the galaxy what Deathworlders do to child killers. The battle was about to begin, and it would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The first shot came from the UES Retribution. Admiral Lisa Shaw watched as the massive railgun fired a piece of metal the size of a telephone pole at nearly the speed of light. The projectile hit the Korthek flagship with the force of a small nuclear bomb. Overlord Thrak was thrown across his bridge as his ship shook like a toy in the hands of an angry child. Sparks flew from broken computers and the lights flickered on and off. Half of his crew was injured or dead from that single shot. What was that? Thrak screamed, pulling himself up from the floor. Green blood was running from a cut on his forehead. How can such a small ship have such powerful weapons? Before anyone could answer, 3 more human ships fired their rail guns. The metal projectiles punched through the Korthek shields and armor like they were made of paper. 2 Korthek cruisers exploded in balls of fire, and a third ship broke in half, spilling its crew into the cold vacuum of space. "All ships, attack the humans!" Thrak ordered. "There are only 12 ships. We can destroy them with numbers." But the human ships were not fighting like any enemy the Korthek had ever faced. Instead of staying in one place and trading shots, the human vessels moved in complex patterns, working together like a pack of wolves hunting prey. Captain Kate Sullivan's ship, the Hama, executed a maneuver that would have been impossible for most alien crews. The ship spun around its center axis while firing its weapons, creating a spinning storm of death that destroyed everything in its path. The crew inside was pressed against their seats by forces that would have killed most aliens, but humans from the heavy-gravity death world of Earth barely noticed. "Direct hit on 2 more enemy cruisers," Sullivan reported calmly as her ship destroyed another Korthek vessel. "They're not built for real combat. Their armor is too thin and their shields are too weak." Captain Danny Torres launched his fighter. Squadrons from the Storm, 60 small, fast attack ships poured out of the carrier like angry wasps from a disturbed hive. Each fighter was piloted by a human who had trained for years to fly in the dangerous skies of Earth, where storms could crush aircraft and gravity could kill pilots who made mistakes. The Korthak had their own fighters, but they were designed for intimidating civilians, not for fighting real military pilots. The human fighters moved through space with deadly precision, their weapons cutting through enemy ships like knives through butter. "This is impossible," Thrak shouted as he watched his fleet being destroyed. "Humans are supposed to be a primitive species. How can they fight like this?" His science officer, a thin Korthek named Zek, was studying the human ships with growing fear. "Overlord, I'm reading incredible energy signatures from their weapons, and their technology is far more advanced than our intelligence report suggested." "And look at how they move," added another officer. "Their ships are pulling forces that should kill their crews, but they're not even slowing down." What the Korthak didn't understand was that humans had evolved on a planet that was constantly trying to kill them. Earth had crushing gravity, deadly storms, poisonous plants, and animals that could kill with a single bite. Every human was descended from creatures who had survived millions of years of constant danger. Commander Alex Bennett was coordinating the electronic warfare from the Retribution. His job was to attack the enemy's computers and communication systems. Alex was a quiet man who preferred working with machines to fighting with weapons, but his work was just as deadly as any gun. "I'm into their communication network," Alex reported to Admiral Shaw. "Their command structure is falling apart. They can't coordinate their defense." Within the first hour of battle, the Korthek fleet was effectively blind and deaf. Their ships couldn't talk to each other, their weapons couldn't find targets, and their commanders had no idea what was happening. Meanwhile, on the planet's surface, the real horror was being revealed. Marine Colonel Chris Morgan was leading the ground assault to rescue the captured Zelani. Chris was a big man with scars on his face and arms that were thick with muscle from years of training on Earth's high-gravity surface. "Landing zone secured," Chris reported as his Marines poured out of their transport ships. "We're seeing massive prison camps. Tens of thousands of Zelani packed into cages." The Korthak ground forces were used to dealing with frightened civilians, not with trained soldiers from a death world. The human Marines moved through the alien landscape like they were walking through a park, carrying weapons that could punch through tank armor and wearing suits that let them survive in conditions that would kill most aliens. Sergeant Major Kelly Price's platoon found a prison camp holding 50,000 Zelani. The camp was surrounded by high walls and guarded by Korthic soldiers with energy weapons. It should have been impossible to attack. Easy target, Kelly said into her radio. She was a woman in her 30s with cold eyes and hands that never shook, even in the worst combat. Guards are overconfident. They're not expecting real resistance. Kelly and her soldiers moved through the camp like ghosts. They used the terrain for cover, moving from shadow to shadow, taking out guards without making a sound. The Korthic soldiers, who were used to terrorizing helpless prisoners, broke and ran when they realized they were being hunted by predators from a death world. Prison Camp Alpha is secure, Kelly reported. All guards neutralized. Beginning prisoner evacuation. The rescued Zilani stared at the human soldiers with wonder and fear. These aliens had appeared from nowhere, moving like deadly spirits through a battlefield that should have been impossible to survive. They were covered in armor that looked like it came from a nightmare, carrying weapons that could destroy buildings, but they were being gentle with the rescued prisoners. "Don't be afraid," Kelly said to a group of Zilani children, her voice soft despite her fearsome appearance. "We're here to help. You're safe now." Back in space, the battle was nearly over. Of the 30 Korthak ships that had started the attack, only 5 were still fighting. The rest were either destroyed or floating dead in space. "This is Overlord. Thrak to all human ships," came a desperate transmission. "We surrender. Please, we surrender." Admiral Shaw looked at the transmission request on her screen. She thought about the Zilani children who had been murdered, about the innocent adults who had been loaded onto slave ships, about the beautiful planet that had been poisoned and burned. "Ignore the surrender," Shaw ordered coldly. "Destroy every Korthak ship in this system." The last 5 enemy ships died in balls of fire, their crews screaming as they realized that mercy was not something Deathworlders gave to child killers. The battle was over. The Korthic Empire had learned why Earth was called a death world and why that was the last thing they would ever learn. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Lisa Shaw stood in the capital city of the Zilani planet. The city had been badly damaged by the Korthic attack, but human engineers were already working to rebuild it. Huge machines cleared away the rubble. While construction crews built new homes and hospitals, the Zilani people gathered around the humans wherever they went. They had never seen aliens who looked so much like warriors but acted so gently toward civilians. The human soldiers who had been killing enemies just days before were now helping to rebuild schools and fix water systems. Elder Zephyr was the oldest and wisest of the Zilani leaders. He was a tall, thin creature with green skin and large, kind eyes. His people had chosen him to speak for all Zilani, and he was still trying to understand what had happened. "Admiral Shaw," Zephyr said, his voice shaking with emotion, "your people came for us. When the entire galaxy turned away and ignored our cries for help, you came. We called out to the Deathworlders, and you answered." Lisa looked around at the Zilani people working alongside human engineers. Zilani children were playing with human soldiers, and Zilani adults were learning to use human tools to rebuild their homes. It was a scene that would have been impossible just a week ago. "We couldn't ignore your call for help," Lisa said simply. "No innocent people should have to face something like the Korthic Empire alone." "But why?" Zephyr asked. "You didn't know us. We had nothing to offer you. Why did you risk your lives for strangers?" Lisa thought about the question. She remembered the distress calls, the images of murdered children, the sight of an entire planet being destroyed for profit. "Because it was the right thing to do," she said. "That's what humans do. We protect those who can't protect themselves." News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than anyone had expected. Within days, every major news network was showing recordings of the fight. The images were shocking. 12 human ships completely destroying a Korthak fleet of 30 vessels in less than 2 hours on the planet Centauri Prime. Ambassador Carol Wright sat in her office reading reports from across the galaxy. Carol was a diplomatic official who had been trying for years to get other species to take humans seriously. Now, suddenly, everyone wanted to talk to her. "Ma'am, I have the Andromedan Council on line 1, the Vegan Trade Union on line 2, and the Altair Defense Force on Line 3, her assistant said. They all want to discuss military cooperation agreements. Carol smiled. Just a week ago, most of these same governments had been ignoring human requests for trade deals and diplomatic meetings. Now they were calling her every hour. Tell them I'll get back to them, Carol said. But first, get me a meeting with the Galactic Council. I think they're finally ready to listen to what humans have to say. On the Korthek homeworld, panic was spreading through the government. The news of their fleet's destruction had reached the capital city, and suddenly their centuries of easy conquests seemed to be over. Emperor Vash, the ruler of the Korthek Empire, sat in his throne room reading reports from his military commanders. The reports all said the same thing. The human fleet had been smaller, but their weapons were far more powerful and their tactics were far more advanced. How is this possible? Vash demanded. Humans are supposed to be primitives who just learned to travel between stars. How can they fight like this? General Krath, the commander of the Korthek military, was studying the battle recordings with growing fear. Emperor, I've been analyzing their attack patterns. These humans fight like they evolved in constant warfare. Every move they made was perfect. Every shot they fired hit its target. They fought like killing was as natural to them as breathing. And look at this, added Science Minister Kell, pointing to a screen showing human ships pulling impossible maneuvers. Their ships were pulling gravitational forces that should have killed their crews, but the humans inside weren't even slowing down. They must come from a planet with incredibly strong gravity, Emperor Vash was beginning to understand. The humans weren't just another species with advanced technology. They were apex predators who had evolved on a planet so dangerous that it had created the perfect warriors. Cancel all raids on species that have contacted the humans, Vash ordered. We are not going to war with Deathworlders. On Earth, the news of the Zilani rescue was being celebrated in every major city. Crowds gathered in the streets, cheering for the brave men and women who had traveled across the galaxy to save strangers. The human government announced that they were forming a new military division specifically to respond to calls for help from peaceful species. Captain Jake Morrison, who had first received the Zilani distress call, was now stationed at a new defense platform built in the Kepler 442 system. His job was to make sure that no one ever again tried to attack the Zilani. It's strange, Jake said to his communications officer, Amy Carter. A week ago, we were just another species trying to make friends in the galaxy. Now everyone is either afraid of us or wants to be our ally. Amy was monitoring radio signals from across the galaxy. Since the battle, she had been receiving messages from dozens of species. Some were asking for help against raiders and pirates, others were offering trade deals and military alliances. Sir, I'm getting another distress call, Amy reported. This one is from the Tau Ceti system. They're being attacked by something called the Skull Fleet. Jake looked at the message on his screen. Another innocent species was being attacked by predators who thought they were safe because their victims were weak. The attackers were about to learn the same lesson the Korthek had learned. Send the message to Admiral Shaw, Jake ordered. Tell her we have more work to do. Back on the Zilani planet, Elder Zephyr was unveiling a new monument in the center of the capital city. The monument was a tall stone tower with words carved in both Zilani and human languages. To the warriors from the Death World, Zephyr read aloud to the crowd of Zilani and human visitors, who answered our call when darkness fell, never forgotten, always honored. The crowd was quiet as they looked at the monument. Zilani children placed flowers at its base, while human soldiers stood at attention nearby. The galaxy is different now, Zephyr continued. Before, the strong could attack the weak without fear. Now, the weak can call for help, and the Deathworlders will answer. The universe is a safer place because of what you did. Admiral Shaw stood with the other human commanders watching the ceremony. She thought about how much had changed in just a few days. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy not as conquerors but as protectors. What do you think happens now? Captain Miller asked quietly. Shaw looked up at the stars. where she knew other innocent species were probably being attacked by those who thought they were safe. "Now we wait for the next distress call," she said. "And we make sure that anyone who hurts innocent people knows that the Deathworlders are watching." The ceremony ended, but the message was clear. The galaxy had learned that humans were not just another species. They were the guardians of the innocent, the protectors of the weak, and the nightmare of those who preyed on others. And in the deepest parts of space, where predators had once hunted without fear, they now looked over their shoulders. Because somewhere out there, the humans were listening, and they had proven that mercy was only for those who deserved it.